An ancient Greek proverb states that fortune favors the young. Although this may seem harsh to those of us that might not fit into the youthful category, certain aspects of this phrase make sense. For example, finding representation in the form of an agent or a manager early on in a career means better odds for success. In this episode, I'll make the case that the best thing you can do is have proper representation. I'll break down the myths, issues, and benefits so that you won't be able to say, "It's all Greek to me."
Welcome to Casting Actors Cast, the podcast and video for actors. Each week, we provide practical, useful information to advance your craft and your career in the business of show. And now, here's your host, Casting Director Jeffrey Dreisbach.
Well, hello, and welcome to today's episode of Casting Actors Cast. I'm Jeffrey Dreisbach. I'm a casting partner with Pat McCorkle at the McCorkle Group in New York. How are you? I hope you're having a good day. I'm having a really good day, especially because you're here. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. I'm looking forward to sharing as much as I can about the agent-manager thing that actors have a lot of challenges with many times. But first, this is that moment of the podcast where I get to say thank you for tuning in to Casting Actors Cast. I invite you to check out the website, castingactorscast, all one word, .com. There you're going to find past shows, past show notes called Jeff's Jots, all about and corresponding to each of the episodes from the past. And I upload the new episodes every week, so I invite you to check those out. Additionally, if you fill out that form that says dive into the talent pool, you're going to find that there are some freebies, some offerings that I give to you absolutely free of charge just for kind of checking it out. One is a book that I wrote called Conversation Pieces Out of the Studio, the voiceover workshop for professional actors. It's 100% free. It's all about doing voiceover work. I think you're going to find that really interesting and fun if that has an interest for you. Additionally, you're going to find a free video called Casting Secrets, What They Don't Tell You. This is a private YouTube video. It's 20 minutes long. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. And finally, my little shout out to my good friends at actorsconnection.com. Hey, by the way, coming up pretty soon is a class that I'll be teaching called From Stage to Screen. It's a 2-session workshop, and I assign scenes and we talk about and really get into what it is. If you have a lot of stage experience and you don't have a lot of film and television experience, I think you're going to find this class really, really useful. This is at actorsconnection.com/New York. And there's also all kinds of classes going on there with professionals in the industry doing workshops and seminars, all kinds of really interesting stuff. I invite you to check those folks out. Hello to my good friends, Colleen and Tony. All right, so let's jump into this, shall we? It's really interesting because I think the question I get probably most often when I'm doing a class or a seminar or even like meeting somebody is, you know what, I'm having trouble getting an agent. Or actors writing to me saying, can you recommend an agent for me? And it's always kind of a little strange because if I am not familiar with you or your work, why would you take my word for a recommendation? It's important that we establish a relationship before I make those kinds of recommendations. And guess what? I don't make them very often. I think it's pretty important that the actor take charge of their own business side of their career, as well as continue to work on the art of being an actor. But agents and managers, I think it's important that we kind of dive into not only how it works, but maybe a little more insight into the dynamics that take place between agents, managers, and talent, as well as the relationships with casting directors, producers, and directors. So we got a lot to cover today. But first, let's start off by talking about the job of an agent or a manager. Well, clearly agents and managers are there to represent you. How do they find clients? How do they find talent to represent? That's a great question, right? So it's not that they're always kind of searching the internet for you. It really is that they are actively involved in going to and teaching classes. Many agents and managers, almost all of them that I know, go to workshops. They go to showcase Every spring, for example, all colleges and universities, they come to New York and they do a live showcase, and agents and managers are sitting in the audience. And if there's some talent that they're interested in, they'll make an appointment, have an appointment with the talent. And if it works out, then suddenly that actor finds themselves being represented. Now, there are other avenues, but first of all, understand the role of that agent is because they are looking for people to help them make money with the projects that they help find for you. It's that simple. So agents and managers attend showcases, they attend performances, especially if you're in a college or university training. It's important for you to know that that is a major avenue for agents to find talent. You should also know that agents and managers will oftentimes take recommendations from people that they know. Perhaps they're representing an actor and the actor calls them up and says, I really think you should meet this actor that I just worked with because they're really fantastic. So that's another way in which agents find out about who's out there. But the showcase, or if you are moving to New York and you're looking for some representation, you really should do your very best to get some kind of acting gig, whether it's just getting a group together and putting on a show, or whether it's doing a showcase, whether it's working on new material, however you can do it. But remember this, that agents and managers aren't waiting for you. Agents and managers have an agenda for what they need, what they're looking for, and what is going on. What's the pulse of what's taking place out there in the industry? Also, I think you should know this. Agents and managers have reputations, just like actors and casting directors do. Believe it or not, casting directors have reputations. Casting directors that really love working with actors, that's one. There are other mitigating factors that make a casting director sort of off-putting for some actors, maybe because they're not very friendly, or they're very serious, or because they've got so many things going on that they don't really give actors the time and attention that they deserve. That's just kind of part of life. But the reputation for an agency goes a little bit deeper than that. The reputation of an agency might have to do with how long they've been in business. It might have to do with the kinds of talent that they represent. It's getting very, very specific now that there are talent agents that are representing musical theater performers, or people of color, or older people, or, whatever the demographic might be. Depending upon what kind of work is going on in the industry, you can bet that there's an agent or a manager who's out there actively finding people that they can represent that can fit some of those bills, so to speak, some of those jobs. So the reputation that an agent has is very important for you to do the work and figure out what that reputation is. Are they specializing in something? If they are a large agency or a boutique agency, all of that information is very useful for you, because then you can make an educated decision about what would be the best representative for you. And of course, they're there to represent you, but they also take 10% of what you make of that job, from that job. But they are also many times very actively involved in career guidance. So that's another aspect that agents have, or managers for that matter, that you might want to consider. You should know that agents and managers are always looking for talent who can bring them success. So they know what's going on in terms of what's being asked for, film, television, theater. Then they match that to their client list that they have. And if there are some holes in that client list, then you can bet that they're going to be actively looking to fill that hole. I hope that makes sense. So they're always looking for talent who can bring them success, depending upon what's happening industry-wide. Here's another note. Agents and managers prefer clients that take initiative when it comes to their career. This is an important one, and it certainly is something I can speak to on a personal level. When I first started and got my very first agent, I was like, okay, now I can chill, I can hold off and wait for the phone to ring, take the appointments, go to audition, book some gigs, blah, 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 blah. Well, you know what? That didn't really happen that way. It wasn't until I took initiative to do the research of those jobs, to find out what casting directors were working on what projects. When I took an active interest in my own career, that agent and manager were up to and wanting to participate in that career. Not as excited about participating in a career where they have to light a fire under their client. So if you're one of those people who feels really good about taking your own initiative and jumping in, then that's going to serve you well, in my opinion, as you start doing additional searching for agents and managers. Also know that agents and managers have dynamic relationships with casting directors, with producers, with studios. Now, it's true that at our office, for example, we have, 15 or 20 agencies that we really like working with. It doesn't mean that we don't like working with the others. It just means that it goes a little bit further than just asking for clients to see if they're available to audition for a project that we're working on. It's a little bit different than that. For example, there are some agents that we have a nice relationship with that if that agent were to call me and say, Jeff, I really think you should see this new actor, this new client I'm bringing on. Guess what? I'm bringing that in because I like that agent. I like that agent's taste. And I can tell you that there are many times when we are feeling like we might be a little stuck trying to find the right talent for the project. And we bring that up to an agent and we say, gosh, you know what? I'm having this issue. Do you have anybody that could help us with this? And they say, yes, I've got this great client, and they'd be perfect. So that kind of relationship, it's not strictly business all the time. There's a sort of a fluidity. Ooh, good word. Fluidity to the relationships that casting, producers, studios have with agents who represent talent. Now, I've been using agents and managers sort of in the same breath, but you know that agents are really different than managers. There are differences in many ways. One is that agents are different because they have a very large, usually, they have pretty large client list. Agents are also signatories of the unions, SAG-AFTRA, Actors Equity Association, and their focus is primarily on getting appointments for you for their projects or projects that cross their desk. So I'm a casting director. Let's say I'm working on a feature film. I put a breakdown out. That breakdown goes out to all the agents and managers. The agent and manager take a look at the breakdown and they submit their clients based on the information we've provided in the breakdown. That's how that works. But you know what? Agents really have a primary focus of getting you the appointment. You have to book the job because you're the talent. But getting that appointment is something that agents are very, very aggressive about in a good way. And it's a very professional relationship almost 100% of the time. Now, managers can be slightly different. Managers are there to help manage you. There are different aspects with managers, for example. Many times managers are much more interested and focused on career development. Sure, they want you to book jobs. That's without question. But they're also very careful about selecting the kinds of jobs that you should be seen for. Also, don't forget that managers legally have to work through agents to negotiate contracts. So that means 10% goes to the agent, 15% usually goes to the manager. But the manager's primary focus is not just getting you an audition. A manager might also be interested in who you're meeting, why you're meeting them, what projects are in development. And so there's a different kind of, I don't want to say personal attention, it's all very professional, but I think that there is a sense of a manager's there to manage. Make sense? I mean, that obviously makes sense. But you know what I'm trying to say, I hope. So the agents have a kind of a slightly different perspective than managers do. So the way to think of it, I think, is this. Managers manage careers. Agents represent actors for jobs. Okay, somebody write that down because that was really good. Managers manage careers. Agents represent actors for jobs. And that's, I think, the best way to keep those two separate. All right, now that you have a better understanding of the actor-representative relationship, here are some ways to make it happen. First of all, please try to remember that this is a marathon. It is not a race. Even though there's a sense of urgency as a young actor, maybe you're coming to the city or Los Angeles or Chicago or Atlanta, maybe you're deciding to make that big break into the professional arena. It's important to really aggressively try to find somebody who you like that is going to represent you well. It is still a marathon and not a race. Being desperate never got anybody anywhere. So please just have the right perspective and approach this in a professional way and not an emotional one. Another suggestion is to do your research. I would suggest making a list, understanding the players involved. How large is that agency? Some agencies have 4 people in them. Other agencies have 40. So really doing the research and finding out what departments those agencies have. Sometimes they're just film and television. Sometimes they're just commercial agents. Sometimes they're across the board, which means they have a commercial agent, and then they have a legit agency for theater, and then they have a film and television agents. And so you might need to meet all of those folks before you even get asked or invited to sign with them. And the best way to deal with that is really understanding this question that happens all the time, which is, how do I approach an agency that I'm looking for representation? Well, I think the first step would be to ask yourself, what is the best way I would want to be approached? And then do that. Ask yourself, okay, if somebody wanted something from me, what would be the most appealing way to ask? And once you really understand that answer, then that is a great way, that's a great outline for you to move forward in approaching those agents and or managers. Are there any casting directors? Are there any actor friends? Are there any directors you've worked with who can recommend an agent? Well, that's something that you should really look into. There are all kinds of ways in which you can not only get that information, but you can also even get recommendations. The next question, I think, for you is to ask yourself, what are your needs and interests? Is there an agency that can fit into that sphere of what your interest is? So if you're a well-trained theater actor and you want to go into film and television, perhaps there is an agent out there that specializes in theater-trained actors for film and television. There really are. In the same way, if you are only interested in film and television, then why would you waste your energy and time on an agency that has a good theatrical reputation? You just wouldn't spend that time. So that's another aspect, is really fine-tuning what your needs are and then looking for how that can fit into the professional arena. Also, another suggestion that I've heard this all the time, but I can tell you is absolutely true. Work begets work. That means the most successful time in my acting career was when I was already working. It's something in the air. I don't know. I can't even define it. It's almost like some kind of energy or universe force that lets people know that I'm successful because I'm working. Now, that was an emotional trip for me, and that was very difficult because on those leaner times, it was really challenging. But work begets work is absolutely true. So whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's a class, whether it's a showcase, whether it's just doing your down and dirty research on agents and managers, all of that will have dividends. Some things you may not know about representation is, and I mentioned this earlier, but you should remember and know that agents take only 10%. That's the legal amount. Agents who are signatories of the unions, they can only take 10% of what you make for that job. Managers can take 15% or more. Managers do not ascribe to the same rules and regulations that the unions dictate. So a manager can really be across the board. So you really want to be a little more careful with managers because they do take 15%, sometimes more. And that's based on the areas of interest. That's based on the way that they like to work. And you must have a full understanding that that's the way they work before you should proceed with a manager. Understand also that reps, agents, managers, they prefer actors who are available immediately. And they do not respond quickly. They do respond rather quickly to requests. If an actor responds quickly to an agent that calls them with an appointment or an audition, that's awesome. If you get back a few days later, whether it's on email or a phone call, that's not so awesome. In fact, that'll get you kind of immediate disinterest. So just remember that actors who are responsible and a professional, who are available, this happens a lot of times as the showcase happens, and a lot of college showcases take place in the spring, and that actor has a summer gig. And so they get an appointment with an agent, and they meet the agent, and the actor says, yeah, but I'm working at this summer theater, so I'm not planning on being in New York until the fall. Well, the agent will usually say something, well, get a hold of me in the fall. But you know what? The truth is, if that happens, it's probably not going to happen. There's a really good chance that they might have found somebody else who can fit the bill for what they're looking for. And so you might lose out. Now, I'm not saying don't take the summer job. I am saying that your availability right away, anytime you're meeting an agent or a manager, your professionalism in saying, gosh, you know what? I walk dogs every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 4 until 6 p.m. So I'm not available to audition. Think about that. That agent now has to kind of go, oh, how am I going to remember that? And how's that going to work? And how is that making you a professional actor? So understand the dynamics that are involved there. Also, reps like actors who know how to network and to hustle. And I use that in a positive way for themselves. I don't mean hustle in the negative way. I'm talking about are really out there learning as much as they can. They're networking, they're taking their classes, they're meeting people, they're doing whatever they can to keep themselves going and excited and positive about what's going on in the business. So I would suggest making it your mission to discover where your fortune lies, whether you are young or young to the business. Being connected to an agent or a manager can make all of the difference. I'm Jeffrey Dreisbach. Thank you for joining me today. This is Casting Actors Cast.
It's been great having you in our talent pool today. Your support means the world to us, so please consider sharing, liking, and reviewing this episode wherever you jump in. I'm Megan Grace Martinez. Thanks.